was split off entirely. This is a separate part of the One Great that believes fracture was a mistake and that regression is the only path forward. This frenzied part of the One Great is called an outer god, as per Mikkela's needle. So, as such, like the greater will, it also has its envoys, 3 fingers, not 2. And the fact that its envoys are 3 fingers is likely no coincidence. 2 plus 3 equals a 5-fingered hand, and thus, I think, 3 fingers being envoys sends a powerful message. The message being that if order is run by 2 fingers, then the other 3 are naturally the ones that are missing. Of course, this is just speculation, but I like to think the 3 fingers are kind of a revelation in and of themselves. It sends the message that once all was about the One Great. 3 fingers and 2. Unlike the 2 fingers, 3 fingers are free to tell us the truth. That there was a mistake in the fracturing of things long ago, and that under the branches of order, life now divides and distinguishes, leading to torment, despair, affliction, sins, and curses. And so they believe the only solution is to melt everything with the yellow chaos flame, until order is broken again. I want to quickly talk about the nature of the greater will, because there have been some revelations revealed by Elden Ring's DLC, and one of them is that the Greater Will both is and inhabits a lightless abyss, as is depicted by the empty space in Count Emir's headpiece. Now, this is going to sound contradictory, and of course this is all just speculative territory on a cosmic level, but I think somehow the birth of everything might have come from Void. The Greater Will's Void. Astel, natural born of the Void, is one such example of this happening, after all. Because of this bastard of the stars, we know that life can come from a void. So, if a void is a clue to the Greater Will's nature, then maybe a void is also what the One Great was, and inhabited. And so, perhaps it's no coincidence then that when the frenzy burns, it burns it away to nothingness. One great void. In the gravesite plane, we come across countless spirit gravestones, which are gravestones that are starting to turn into spirits, fitting omens of death drift. These stones, if crafted together with a swollen grape, create a surging frenzied flame, an item which violently spits frenzy like fire in a hot pan. Its description reads, "Spirits are eternal, and yet frenzied flame melts them away regardless." It's no wonder that the torrent, being a spirit, is terrified of this place. Naturally, too, the Horn Senate, whose culture revolves around the spirits, forbid the flame's use. To stamp it out, at some point they would send an order of inquisitors to invade though apparently the fact frenzy is forbidden hasn't stopped the one to invent this consumable. The Mad Craftsman's cookbook that teaches it reveals that it is a record of crafting techniques left by a craftsman who served Midra until night. His eyes were burned by the flame of frenzy. But were his experiments with frenzy being done before or after the purge of Midra's sect? What I really want to understand here is, was frenzy brewing in the ants for a while, or did it only become a threat when the Inquisition invaded? Let's talk about that. We know that frenzy must have been present in the ants in some capacity before the Hornsent Inquisition. Why else would the Inquisition have come to stamp it out? However, I don't think it was out of control by any means. I think they were merely on the move. That's because of this tortured phantom of the ants who questions why the Inquisition was even necessary. While begging for mercy, he says, "I ask, what crime did Great Will commit?" It's not clear whether he simply doesn't understand the threat that frenzy represents, or whether he simply doesn't think that Middra was to blame for it. But I think we can at least take from this that frenzy wasn't out of control. Hornsent Inquisitors had been made aware of it. But I reckon even the mere hint of frenzy
No! I knew it too! Like, I think it's a grab, and then...
That's because frenzy is essentially a self-fulfilling prophecy. Fear of frenzy is void, inspires an extreme response to those in power. The torture and torment of those who are frenzied, which is itself an extreme response that exacerbates frenzy even more, and on it goes. In the end, frenzy only really exists because of how awful the world is, and the torture to stifle it only proves that fact. So,
Dude, this is
when the
hard.
Inquisition arrived to purge this damnation like no other, they brought pain, as was their way. These Hornsent Inquisitors are not unlike Rykard's own Inquisitors, who we discussed in a recent video. Both forces use torture to extract the answers they seek, and both Inquisitions likely existed to root out traitors and threats to their regime. As opposed to the fire of Rykard's Inquisitors, the Hornsent's brand of Inquisition utilizes golden arcs called barbs, which, according to the spell, were a known symbol of coercive question. The barbs on the Great Sword of Damnation, for example, unwrap to pierce the victim within, inflicting continuous wounds to assure eternal. There's actually an intriguing bit of lore hidden in the weapons skill of this item, which reads, "There is something of the Golden Order in the sight of those fixed on this crux." Golden... For me, this brings to mind Marika, crucified as she is upon a golden ark in the game. Alternatively, since the Golden Order was created upon the removal of destined death, perhaps the Great Sword of Damnation evokes this fact, inflicting eternal suffering without death as a release. Thus is the Golden Order seen in the shadows fixed upon its crux. Perhaps it's hard to say for sure what is meant by this line, but I'm glad this line exists because I think it means they want us to question why the barbs of the Hornsent look like the rune arcs of the Elden Ring. So why? Why do the Hornsent have these golden arcs?
No!
Methods of torture that echo the Golden Order when theirs is a civilization that preceded the Golden Order and the Elden Ring. So, to answer that, while I think it's true that the Hornsent were around long before that, I do think Marika and the Elden Ring became part of their culture over time. The simplest proof of this is in how the Hornsent believed that Marika betrayed them, because for them to consider Marika's actions betrayal, Marika must have been considered part of the Hornsent's culture. But for more evidence of Marika's involvement in this place at this time, take a look here, where you
Oh no, no, no! Oh no! What happened?
There's a stake of Marika here.
I couldn't get away.
For these to be in
He,
the realm
like,
of
sucked
shadow,
me
it means
in.
that Marika must have been a force in the world long before the Inquisition arrived. Even here, in this sanctum that's geographically separated from the rest of the realm. And while you could argue that these are just here for a gameplay reason, you know, and that they have no relevancy to the lore, I don't think so, because I think From Software are aware of the lore implications of these statues. For evidence of this, look at Raya Lucaria. This is a place where Marika would have been unwelcome, and so there are no stakes of Marika at all here. All of this is to say that torture was ingrained in the Golden Order, be it via the Hornsent's Inquisitors, or Rykard's Inquisitors, or the Elden Beast itself. Order requires enforcement, it seems. Remember, Marika's Minor Mercury has taught us that there is kindness without order, and before that there is cruelty with it. So, even though such torture exacerbates frenzy, it was the institutionalized way forward for the Hornsent, who, as we know from other parts of the lore, were a race that definitely had no issues persecuting their own brethren. The tortured phantom we mentioned earlier laments, "I beg you stop, haven't I taken enough? Are we not brethren? Yet we offer only cruelty." Here in this sanctum, where frenzy was taking root, the Hornsent brought full strength. But perhaps the place should have been left alone, for the result results of the Inquisition were mixed, to say the least. Clearly, the Inquisition wasn't many inquisitors have become friends with many disciples, revealing interestingly, one spell they channel is Frenzied Burst, which has a description that talks about how every single person who attempted to control the flame of frenzy succumbed to madness by a desperate internal struggle. This is the same incantation that Vike uses, and it might be a reflection of his own struggle. The fact that this incantation exists is called a meager victory over frenzy. This is why I think the Inquisitors fought hard before succumbing to the frenzy. Perhaps this first-hand witnessing of the despair that was coming as a result of their torture.
I can't fucking see!
The Ancient Untouchables, the Winter Lanterns. The forest is now truly the most horrific part of this thing. Not the mines itself. I say that because the Inquisitors who occupy the lands are not a frenzy victim. Despite frenzy having infected the rats, shattered the consent within, the Inquisitors of the lands don't have a single frenzy
Oh,
attack.
you missed me. Oh, I beat him.
I think that this was done to show that their Inquisition
Oh
was
my God.
successful
Unless
to a
there's
degree,
a... Nope.
thanks to the
Oh, I got the
majority of
full
the
thing now.
Inquisition's strength
Oh, I gotta
being
go into the
focused here
hotel.
at the Manse, and there is Inquisition strength here.
So what's happening
For example,
now?
one of the Fat
Let's get back
Inquisitors
to the
is in
hotel.
possession of
Our
revered
friends.
Spirit Ash,
And our friends.
powerful blessing of the Horn Scent,
And our
and
friends.
there are even the spirits
Ah,
of Divine Beast Warriors roaming the halls. The Divine Beast Warriors were an elite force among the Horn Scent, but you know that already from fighting them, don't you? To be clear though, these aren't physical Beast Warriors, they're actually spirits. Perhaps these warriors were once part of the Inquisition's forces and then died in this place. What's more likely though, I think, is that perhaps their ashes were given to the Inquisitors,
Oh
who
no, they
then
roughed
summoned them here to fight as
Hypocrite.
weapons to be wielded in their assault. We do, after all, know that the Inquisitors are capable of summoning the spirits of their comrades. We know this thanks to Jory, the Elder Inquisitor, who brings a sort of spirit calling bell to summon his brethren in his boss fight. And it's here, in this place where the catacomb spills out into the forest, that he holds down the fort, alone, a final frontier for those coming in or out. According to the Inquisitor Ashes, Inquisitions often perplexed the minds of the uninitiated, and so seniority was viewed as an asset, and Jory is an Elder Inquisitor. Thus his age helps to explain why he is the last one remaining on the edge of the forest, endlessly calling in his brethren to fulfill their duties in death. One thing I wonder though is why Inquisitions perplexed the minds of the uninitiated. Was it because these Inquisitions were
Until
focused on
next
torture
time.
so deeply